How's everybody doing today? Let me see what's going on. I'm struggling today. Let's see. Make sure y'all can hear me. You know how we do it. Just put any tech questions in the chat. We'll go over it. Trying to get motivated on a Sunday. Let's see. I think I'm rolling. I'm sure everybody watching the football game. So hope my little coach was up. So you said we're gonna talk about the API gateway. I think that's the future, so that's one reason I did it. So we find myself real quick on YouTube, then we'll get started. You know how we do it. Just go over the couple of videos I did this week, give people time to file in, and we'll get at it. Man, this year is flying by. Thanksgiving week. So I'm sure a lot of people ain't gonna be at work. So let's see. Trying to find myself. I'm just gonna assume I'm good. Assume I'm good. But yeah. Hope everybody's year flying by. Hoping everybody having a good day. Once again, what's up, Game
Hi,
Over?
everyone. Thanks for joining us here at these.
Let me know if you can hear me. Give me a one in the chat if you can hear me. Like I said, this is what we're going over today right there. We'll talk about this at the end. I think the API gateway is kind of one of the appreciated, one of the cornerstone services of AWS. At the bottom, the API Lambda. What's up? Usually a Lambda, but we're gonna get into that. I'll go over real quick the videos I did this week. Give people time enough to file in. So my man was scamming Gucci slash puppy hush puppy. He was calling himself Gucci Master. Was scamming. So hopefully he can get his life together. He got the Bentley and the Rolls up in the first spot, so you know that a little suspicious, right? So my man, they got him locked up. He got 11 years, man. So I hope it was worth it for his 15 minutes of a fame, man. They give people out decades. So, and I think that was Fed time because he was wiring money, man. So they got him on wire fraud. I think those are Fed charges. So come on, Gucci hush puppy scamming. Talking about he got all that money. And what's up, Black Dub 21? Talking about he got all that real estate. No, going to jail without no bail. So it's an old rap song for young people don't know nothing about that. So I've been doing these lately. You see it at the top. Get out of your feelings. It's a business. Meta slash Facebook. She was a technical recruiter. Man, she was on her TikTok crying, but I feel her. She was emotional. She said Meta was her dream job. Hey, it's getting ugly out here. You better figure out what you're going to do and what's your plan B. So hopefully she was getting those Meta checks and she saved a few dollars. This was cool. On C-SPAN, and I played the part of the C-SPAN. The FBI says TikTok is a national security threat. We know it's a Chinese company. We know the CCP, Chinese government runs their company. So the FBI is worried about TikTok. He said something I thought was super deep. He said, if I told you a foreign national company put $100 million sensors in the United States, would you be nervous? I was like, that's a good way to put it. Because, you know, TikTok's on your phone. It's tracking your data. You done gave it your location. You done gave it your address book. You done gave it your camera. So you got 100 million sensors running around the United States, piping data back to China, which I thought was an interesting way to put that. So go check that out. Trying to keep America safe. This was cool. Android, he was kind of red team guy, seemed pretty decent. he figured out a way to bypass the screen. Shout out to Android. They gave him a $70,000 bug bounty for that. And he found it on an accident. He said he was putting in his PIN. He had to reset his phone. So however he did it, when he reset his phone, it didn't ask for him to put the original password in. So he was confused. So once he figured it out, he kind of documented it. Shout out to Android. They sent him a 70K bug bounty. So I always kept saying I was going to maybe try to get in that bug bounty game because you can make a ton of money real quick if you're good at it, right? He may have found one big bug. They gave him 70K for it. So shout out to him. That's a good Christmas money, man. Oh, Google Drive once again hacked by the Chinese/China. Goes along with TikTok. So they were dropping malware in Google Drive boxes and people were clicking on it. And most times businesses and stuff don't block Google Drive, right? Google's a well-known thing. So you wouldn't think they would be serving up malware. So they were. So it's all good though. So that's it. Go check those out if you want to go. If you want to check them out. Once again, if you put comments on them, I reply to like 99% of my comments. The only reason it's 100, not 100, is sometimes I don't get to see them. So I don't know what YouTube does with some of my comments. I don't know if they're, quarantine them or something. But so that's why I said 99. So once again, I think, and we'll talk about it. We're going to talk about some of the architecture at the end. Why I think API Gateway is a foundational service for AWS, and specifically what you need to be learning in the future to maximize your learning on AWS and your future earning power. So let's see what we got. Close that one down. So let's talk about API Gateway is a fully managed service that makes it easier for developers to create, publish, and maintain secure APIs. Everybody's doing API, for microservices to REST APIs, right? Everything is API, is the future, right? API acts as a front door for applications to access data, business logic, functionalities from your backend service. Using your API gateway, you can create RESTful APIs and WebSocket APIs that enable real-time two-way communication application. API gateway supports containerized and service workloads as web applications. So this is some of your stuff at connected users streaming the dashboards, web and mobile applications, IoT devices, private applications, and VBCs. Once again, the API gateway, you can cache your APIs. Sometimes if you're using the same API and it's returning the same data every time, you don't have to go hit your backend over here. You can just save that number or that business logic right there in your gateway, and once again, it'll just return it, right? So that's going to cut down all your calls and your charges in the back end, right? You got to pay for it once here, but it's a lot cheaper. What's up, Chaos Rain? I responded to your email, man. Let's see. And on the back end from your API gateway, you can connect to Lambda, which is probably the serverless thing of choice, right? Because Lambda, you can run Java, C#, right? That's where your business logic. It's all serverless, so you don't have to have anything. Or you can send it to the EC2 where you manage all this stuff yourself. You can send it right to your database, DynamoDB. And it cooks to, I think, over 100 other services. You can get public endpoints. You can send it to a private VPC if you got applications on-prem. You want to hook to your VPC and your Amazon API gateway. You can actually run logic that you have on-prem. So if you got Oracle database, PL SQL, C# on-prem, for some reason, for security reasons, you don't want to post it in AWS, you can have your API gateway call that logic on-prem for you. I got to check your email. I sent a response. Okay, that's cool. I'll do that. So one of the things is RESTful API. It's optimized for service to workload, HTTP backend. It's your best choice for APIs that only require API proxy functionality. If you require API functionality and API management, or in a single solution, you can do all that once again through the API gateway. Once again, people do RESTful stuff. What's up, Adrian Nash? Glad you can join us. So once again, RESTful API is one. WebSocket, if you're doing two-way chat and you want to push it for a long running, they call it long running queries, you can use a WebSocket. Building real-time two-way communications application, such as a chat app and a streaming dashboard with WebSocket API. API Gateway maintains persistence connection to handle message transfer between your backend service and your clients, right? So once again, API Gateway, I think it's a foundational service. It's definitely a future because everybody's doing everything through an API. So that's one reason, once again, you want to master. In the future, we're going to start labbing them and hooking them all together. I was going to do it today, but I had a bad weekend. So we're just going to talk about that's it at a high level, right? From the graph, you got your API Gateway. You can save it right into your Lambda database. Your Lambda logic. Right there, you can run Java, C#, PHP, Node.js. So that's stuff that you can build your Lambda on. Once again, it's going to manage the servers for you underneath. So you don't even have to manage them. You don't have to worry about them. If you get 1,000 hits, Lambda's going to take care of that underneath for you. That's one of the beauties of it, right? So if you're a company, you don't want to worry about your computer logic, right? You want to let your your company worry about its proprietary knowledge or algorithms you use. You don't want to worry about the computer stuff. You want AWS to handle that, right? Once again, DynamoDB is the same way. It's a managed service. You just set up your tables, your global indexes, your API scans, and you let AWS handle the server stuff underneath for you. Once again, the ELB, which is your load balancers. If you want to do all handle your servers, you can just put it on EC2. Once again, you can have it call your stuff on premises too. Right? That's the beauty of it. So API Gateway can run any of those backend services and how you want to create. If you see there, REST API, WebSocket, it'll handle your authentication, request validation, throttling. So if you got a gazillion hits, you might want to only do them 100,000 at a time because you want to pay for all that hardware and handle all that, right? So you can throttle how many hits you get that'll go to your backend, right? And of course, you can make it secure, HTTPS and TLS, right? It's security, encryption, traffic. So API cannot allow. So let's keep digging into it. And this is the big thing with the proliferation of mobile devices and Internet of Things. It's increasingly common to make backend systems and data accessible through APIs because many applications use the APIs and communities of developers to rely on them and increasing the amount of time and effort spent on API development, right, and API management. So I think that's one reason, once again, that Amazon created, right, made it easier for you. Resiliency helps you manage the traffic to your back end by allowing you to set throttle rules based on the number of requests per second to your API. Gateway handles the level of traffic received by your API. You are free to focus on your business logic and service rather than maintaining infrastructure. If you're using REST APIs, you can also cache with customizable keys and time to live for your API data to avoid hitting your backend, right? The crazy thing is when you read this, you got to be the size of Amazon or Facebook or something to be getting that many hits per second, right? We were doing big apps, but we wasn't getting, hit every second, right? So, but if you need that level of infrastructure, that level of speed, Amazon can give it to you, course of a price. What's up, Calvin Henderson? Glad you could make it. My coach was beating the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know if we still rolling, but we was in the mix. So once again, API is easy creation and deployment. You can quickly and easily create a custom API to run your code in Lambda, then have the Lambda call your API. The API can execute Lambda code in your account start. You can use step functions, state machines, AWS Elastic Beanstalk, EC2, or web service outside AWS with a public accessible code, right? Because for some reason, I've been looking at ServiceNow. You can actually in your app create a ticket for somebody else to work, right? That's just an API call. So if something's slow in my architecture and I need a DBA to look at the database, I can have my CloudWatch notice that my database is slow and call an API from ServiceNow, put a ticket in, Cool. Thanks, Cal. So once again, you call APIs and integrate them in, even if they're third party services. That's the beauty about it, right? You can use API console. You can define your recipe API and associate resources and methods to manage your API lifecycle, generate a client SDK, and view your API metrics. Right. So if you're getting a lot of calls, right, you can create a dashboard. And I got a couple screenshots of the dashboard, so you can see what that looks like. Monitoring, right, provides you with the dashboard to visually monitor calls to the services. API consoles integrated with Amazon CloudWatch so that your backend performance metrics such as API calls, latency, and error rates. Gateway uses the CloudWatch to record the monitoring information. Then you can set up custom alarms for your API gateway. Then you can also allow the API execution of CloudWatch logs to make debugging easier, right? So we always want to log. So once again, we could track them, track the latency behind there. And then two is once you get all that metrics with observability, you can start having automation just click up, right? So like you got a runaway EC2, and if it's got a memory leak, you can say if it stays above 90% memory for 2 hours, we know it's a memory leak. We can just automatically restart that EC2, clear it up on the back end, right? Send us an email saying we did it. Then you don't have to have you can have your application become self-healing, right? So that's really where you want to get to at the top of your game, top of your infrastructure. So that's some of the API gateways at the top. You can see your usage plan, developers and enterprise, top enterprise customers for traffic. So you can see right there, somebody broke it out for their company. And at the bottom, you got a plan pivot table. So you can see those slashes, that's the microservice from your login, orders, profile, what percentages of it and how much resources is taken on the bottom. Right. So if you see some in the red, you know you need to look at it. So let's see. What can you do to help prevent unauthorized requests to your API? I got that coming up, JM. I got you. That's coming up. So you can do API keys. You can actually do AIM. So if especially because a lot of APIs, you actually call them internally, right, for your company, and they call them other resources. So if they're internal, you got to make sure, okay, this service can do an API call to this other service, right? If it's not coming from that service, right, it's bad, and you can block it, right? We talk about that. I got usage plan and API keys coming up. Oops, Coast 1310 with 30 Eagles went from Rockstar to NFL to Tailspin. It did went pretty quick though, man. I'm a Jalen Hurts fan though. I like him, man. I just don't want him to win today. I'm a big Jalen Hurts fan. So once again, that's the dashboard. At the top too, they got other tabs. You got your home, your enterprise, your developer, right? So in upcoming AWS videos, we're actually going to build it and actually start looking on it, right? We're doing a theory right now, and then we're going to start stitching these services together, right, to create an architecture. I'm dabbing in each one individually. Then later on, we're going to stitch those. Well, we're going to do the API called the Lambda to have the Lambda called DynamoDB, right? And I got that. I think that's what the new architecture that's hot today that young people like. I'm still on the old architecture. We'll talk about that later. What I think is old, new, and what I think is kind of the future, right? So shout out to Tim and Women in Linux. So we've been kind of debating that. Not debating it. I think I agree with it. So like my man JM said, what can we do? We can set up a usage plan specific to who can access one or more deployed API stages and methods. And optionally, we can set the target request rate to start throttling requests. The plan uses API keys to identify API clients and who can access the associated API stages for the keys, right? So you can do a usage plan. Then with that usage plan, you're going to do an API key, which are alphanumeric strings that values that distributes to your application developer customers to grant access to your API. You can use API keys together with Lambda authorizers, IAM roles, and Amazon Cognito to control access to your API. So once again, you got the usage, you got the key. Then each one of these, you got to use username and password, roles, or how do you do yourself authentication and authorization, right? You can use a Lambda authorizer, an IAM role, or Amazon Cognito with your API key shout out to JM. We got a lot of ways to lock this down. The API gateway can generate an API key on your behalf, or you can import them from a CSV. You can generate an API key in the API gateway or import them in from the API gateway from an external source, right? Once again, I got some slides coming up kind of pointing into what that looks like. So there's the API key. We generated from that. We would give it to our users, customers. If we had a paid service, right, or something out there, we could do give it the API key, which is assigned to this gateway. If that key didn't match that API gateway, of course, they couldn't run that through that service, right? So that's one way to do it. We got the Lambda, we got Node.js going to Amazon DB, then we got Lambda Python going to RDS. So I'm kind of more at the bottom, bro. Facts. Oh, does not equal outdated. Sometimes newer is better, where other times newer is just. No, that's true. The only reason I say better, and you're right, better is probably not the term, is newer things. I think since businesses think it's hot, even though it might not be the best thing, they tend to use it more, right? Because that's the new thing, that's the hot thing, right? Whatever's new or hot, or like most people want to jump on that, Calvin, even though it might not even be the best solution, right? It's just hot. That's what everybody's doing. I'm like, you using a hammer to knock in a screw. You can do it, but that don't mean that's the best tool to do it, right? So a lot of times people get on these hot trends too. That's what make the money too, right? So once again, shout out to JM. We get that API key right there. Then the next slide, like we would give our premium users a key or our basic user a key. Then with the API at the top, you see the premium key. The burst rate is 10,000. The burst rate is 5,000. I mean, you would get more speed and throughput, right? Then the basic plan, you would get rate of 5,000 and 2,500, which is half the speed, right? So that way you can use API keys. You can, once again, you give better service or quicker service. So let's call it VIP service, right? So you can send them to a different production stage and a different endpoint. And that premium might be bigger EC2, bigger Lambda, right? So it's going to run quicker. Then two is if you're picking up queues with this backend, the premium, right? Those users are all going to pick up first before you do the basic users, right? So there's different ways, once again, with the usage plan, if you're selling a service, how you can figure out who's got what and give better service, or I guess the elite or VIP service to one resource over another. So from the security standpoint, for the API gateway, we can push it to make it be MFA, right? If it was a high profile API and we only wanted certain people to use it, and we really wanted, we can link it to their phone and do a standard MFA with the service. Also, we want to do HTTPS, really TLS 1.3 or higher. We can set up, we talked about that logging, so we can do it. We definitely want to have encryption. FIPS 140-2 is basically government level encryption. Let me take that off. So that FIPS 142 is basically government level encryption that you could do for DOD or HIPAA compliance. So once again, Amazon's got all those boxes checked. You just got to pay a little money for it. So let's see. Oh my God. Come on, coach. But let's see, data encryption. We always want our data encrypted. The API created in gateway exposed to HTTPS endpoints only. The API gateway does not support unencrypted endpoints, which is cool. For greater security, you can choose a minimum level of TLS. They got 1.2. Everybody else is actually on 1.3 or later. So once again, API's got best security. You can do it on any workload, so that's always positive. So, yep, you can encrypt your cache. We talked about that. So when your cache come in, definitely want to encrypt your cache. Internetworking traffic privacy. Using a gateway, you can create private REST APIs that can be accessed only in your Amazon VPC. The VPCs use the VPC endpoint, which is an endpoint network interface that you create in your VPC. Using resource policies, you can allow or deny access to your API from your selected VPC endpoint. So VPC, basically you creating your own networking, right? You creating your subnet. So you can say what API gateway, what resources can it access on your VPC, because you're controlling the subnets, you're controlling the traffic, you controlling the endpoint, right? You can also use AWS Direct Connect to establish connections to an on-premise network to your VPCs. And I got some slides on it. So once again, shout out to JM, different ways to control your traffic for your VPC, therefore controlling the security of what can connect to what. Does AWS provide the API to the customers or configure it for the customers? If so, does it support access libraries? Does AWS provide the API to the customers? Yeah, because when you do it, when you generate it, it's going to create the API path to get to your Lambda, whatever you're back in. So it's going to create it for you and configure for the. Yep. If so, does I looked it up at the end, JM. I think I saw it support Axios library because you could import some third-party libraries. So this is kind of one like JM was talking about. I can actually create my backend on this side for my Amazon API gateway with my private gateway. Then other people on AWS, the customers that I pay for, I can have a private link. Then they can use their interface endpoint to connect to my backend. These be my services, right? I could be selling something or creating something, but this is my service provider, and this is the consumers, the people we pay, and those are the people we will be sending the API keys that will allow them to connect to us, right? So we can make sure we validate them, right? And two is, since it's on Amazon, we can actually get their and it's actually coming up. I can actually get their subnet, right, or their CIDR of their VPC, and I could say only this customer VPC could connect to mine, right? So I could get the API key and their CIDR block, and I could use those together, right, to lock it down. Shout out to Casual Economist giving me some good news. Uh-oh. But so yeah, that's it. And we jump in once again. You can create and attach a resource policy that allows only a specific IP address to your API gateway. You can open up the API console, left navigation pane to the resources. And I've been doing this in labs, so I've done a few of this. It seemed pretty easy. This is a resource policy. So if you look at the top, it's on the left, it says what is allowed. Principal is anybody. That's actually the API. Invoke, execute the API. Then over here is who am I let actually running those resources, right? So here I'm saying deny if it's not one of these, and see where it there it says source CIDR block or source IP, right? So you got to watch this. This is a double negative. So it says deny, not IP. So when I put my IP address, it says, okay, do not deny me, but deny everybody else, right? So that's a weird way to write the policy, but it took me a while to get the hang of. That's the double negative thing. So when I put my IP address in there, it says deny, not that IP address I put in, but it's going to deny everybody else, right? So that's one of those resource policies to lock it down. So now I'm saying only these IP CIDR blocks can get to my API. So let's go back right here. So if I had that resource right there, it would be saying only this CIDR block could get to my service provider, right? So now we're locking it down. What's up, NC workers? We're only locking down with us. We got our least privileges on there, so we locking it down. We tight, right? That's it too, right? So that's the CIDR block from the company. So when we put that in there, only they can get to our API gateway, right? Then two is we can say only in AWS, only this role can run our API, right? To get to our DynamoDB. And remember that API gateway is running our Lambda, right? So we all serverless right here. We don't have to worry about the data, but we don't have to worry about servers, right? So we just worrying about our database, put some data in, and we loading our code here. We configuring our API. We're associated with the Lambda. That Lambda has access to the DynamoDB. We're saying only this company's cider block can run our API and only this user in AWS, right? So we got to lock down tight. Shout out to JM. We can go to lunch and sleep well at night. It's going to be hard to get us. We got good security going in there. Okay, let's see. Is that schema you must follow when you're using APIs? Yep, it is the schema, but they walk you through it though, JM. But yeah, that's the schema you gotta follow. That's more of a policy template though, not a schema. Which one are you talking about, JM? This right here is a resource policy. It's like a schema though, but I always call it a template. So yeah, so that gives it to you. So then you can say allow or deny principles, who you letting do it. The action, of course, is the API. You got conditions here. So here we're saying what IP addresses and two. I can actually tag resources. I could say I'm tagging this. I'm tagging this DynamoDB, or I'm tagging this user over there. So you got to have this user has to have a DevOps tag. So I'm saying only DevOps users can run this API script, or I'd be able to change it, right? So I could say only this user with this role and this tag called DevOps could actually work on this API gateway, not run it, but to work on it, right? So there's different levels of security that we could do on there. So let's see. Then two is different ways from a security. We can put a WAF in front of it, which is a web application firewall. If you see at the bottom, so it'll take care of our OWASP top 10. It'll take care of blacklisting, bad websites. All that gets tracked by AWS. WAF though is like $3,000 a month. I be real when I be configuring stuff on the fly, man. I always double check that I ain't actually clicking on WAF, right? WAF expensive. It's good, but it's expensive. So in CloudFront, right, is a CDN cloud delivery network. So if you're doing stuff around the world, a lot of times you're gonna put it on the CloudFront to cache those calls from API gateway. Like you, API gateway can cache them, but if you're talking about caching them in overseas or in Europe, you would use CDN, which is Amazon CloudFront, to do that. So once again, just technology. Amazon gives you a lot of resources. You just gotta pay for them. You got to pay for them. They got a lot of stuff out the box that's cool. So security best practices. We just looked at some implement least privileges. All right. So who can do it, what they can do, and what cider block can you do it from? We always talking about logging, right? So we can figure out what's what. CloudWatch alarms. So we can look at API hits or how many hits or where is this user coming from, right? So all that stuff gets logged. And two, we enabling cloud and then config two will say this setup is NIST or HIPAA compliant, and AWS config can help you keep track of all of that. Right? That's the beauty of it. So once again, they give you all those cool services. Once again, I do a lot of federal work. So FedRAMP is federal compliance. You see right there, API gateways there. So we can use that for Fed work. So a lot of times when I'm at work, that's one thing I gotta do is okay. Is this resource or services we're picking from AWS? Can we do federal work with it? So that's why I always put that in there because that's one of my jobs is when I do security reviews and risk reviews. Is that service set up to do that type of work? And two, it helps it easier when when auditors come through and compliance people come through. Is I just be whipping out AWS documentation, right? Boom, here you go. You have to take my word for it, right? So once again, that's good to know from a compliance standpoint. And two is, and I just put that in there because I was trying to figure it out. Is if you look at the architecture, API gateway and a load balancer kind of do the same thing. So I was just trying to figure, okay, when should I use one? When should I use the other one? What's kind of the benefit? So that's why I put that slide in there. So when should I use an ALB and when should I use an API gateway? So. Um, Yeah, every now and then you can, because sometimes your WAF might be blocking something that you think should be going through. I haven't seen it a ton, but I've seen it a few times. Can a WAF create issues with configuration of a network or host files? Yeah, because it's checking connections to your network, and for some reason, it might think that thing shouldn't connect. It might be violating the OWASP top 10. That usually could be on an older version of TLS, right, or SSL, and WAF could just block it, right? Then we have that happen. So we're like, okay, now we got this risky client that needs to connect, right? Because they're not on an approved version of TLS, right? With the encryption. So but those are usually easy to spot. I guess I've been doing it forever, JM. So that's one thing because when a client connects, we always, okay, did they get to the log? Okay, they didn't get to the log, so the WAF is blocking them. Or a lot of times the firewall. There could be two firewalls. One time we had firewall for the division, then I'm sorry, for the company, then each division have their own virtual firewall. Because one division might, block SSL 3.0. One division might like say we only take 1.3. One division like, okay, we know we got a couple OWASP violations, so we want to cut those off so this client can get in because they're paying us a lot of money. So yeah, you can have a few problems with that. But once again, we've been doing it so long, I'll be like, okay, did we see them get connected? Especially if you're on Linux, you're gonna go to the syslogs. That's gonna let you know if they're connected. It's gonna show you what their source and your destination in there, right? So if they didn't make it in there, we know we blocked them right from the wire or from the firewall, right? So then we start tracing it. Shout out to the network team. I work well with them. They know. So I'd be like, oh, so after you do it 100 times, JM, you just kind of know what logs to look and where to look for. So let's compare the API and the application load balancer. The cool thing with the gateway, they can create, which we saw with the keys, you can create rate limiting and bursting for your API. Right, ALB has no rate limit and bursting, right? So if you got a client and they just start sucking out your resources, the ALB is gonna be like, okay, the API with those keys, we can be like, you're not on our premium list, so we blocking you after you use 5,000 bursts or LCU reads. We're blocking you. You're over your resource limit, right? Cool thing with API gateway integrates with WAF. Same thing with the ALB. Bad thing for gateway is it's not possible to get a static IP address from endpoint, right? But you gotta remember this is strictly serverless, right? It's possible to get a static IP address for the load balancer. And I think JM brought that up last time. Somebody brought that up. Or help me out if you wanted to do a load balancer because you need a specific static IP address, you can use API gateway. You would have to use an application load balancer for that, right? So gateway only API gateway only does HTTPS traffic, right? Which is cool. I don't want to do anything else. Even if you're doing basic stuff, I just want to use HTTPS. ALB, you can do HTTP tracking. Gateway, you can do request validation, request and response. ALB, you cannot do request validation and response. So on ALB, you would do that actually in your EC2. You would do it in your code, right? If you want to do the request validation, if you were doing a WebSocket call or API call, or you just have to do that validation in your code. In Java, there's a ton of Java things that validates code. But the cool thing with API, you can do it right in the front end, and you wouldn't have to actually code it, right? So once again, you save yourself some coding strokes with that. Able to burst spiky. So if you get spiky traffic, like you do a sale or something, and you got a hit of 1,000,000, API gateway handles that a little better. Able to handle spiky traffic. Default rates 10,000, which is a second. You can burst up to 5,000. ALB delay during spicy traffic. You can pre-allocate HCUs to avoid delays. Charge extra for that, right? So if you get spikes, ALB is going to take a while. They call it to warm up, to spin up behind the scenes, right? For Amazon to handle that 10,000 requests per second, right? ALB is going to take a little while to warm up. The cool thing though is you can pre-allocate it with the ACLUs for that amount of traffic. Cool thing with API gateway, they're able to integrate with Lambda and from different regions and even different AWS accounts. ALB is just a regional service. So if I'm doing something, if I'm in, I think it's Ohio, and I'm doing something in Virginia or on the East Coast, right? You can't really do that in ALB, or you gotta kind of wire that up yourself. In API Gateway, I can hook up in different regions, different account, and different AWS resources. So that's the cool thing about Gateway. So see what if the ALB is if the if ALB is not able to map, that sounds like it can be drastically slow the process down. Um, yeah, I wouldn't say drastically because the API gateway is doing it. I would just do that manually, right? So the slow part, the APIs, the amount of time API gateways, it's going to have to validate that, right? So I'm just doing it on the back end, and the API gateway is doing it on the front end, right? So I wouldn't say it would be, I wouldn't think it would be drastically slowing it down because a lot of times Amazon API gateway is using the same technology I'm doing it, right? I'm just doing it on the background, right? And two, a lot of times your Java, the Java services, they were meant to do that too, so they're not super slow. So I wouldn't think it would be dramatically slow. So the API gateway, and I think this is what you asked me, Jam. It handles Swagger, Open API, Spec, and Spec 3.0. No direct method to import and export rules. We talked about authentication and authorization. An API, you get a lot of stuff. You get API keys, AIM, the Cognito user identity pool, external identities. ALB, you get Cognito, LDAP, and a few others. API, you can cache the responses. In the ALB, you can't cache it. Timeout limit is 30 seconds. ALB is 4,000. So if you got a long running query, anything over 15 minutes, API, you can use Lambda with API Gateway, right? You would have to use ALB and EC2 if it's over 15 minutes, right? You have to. So those are kind of parameters you need to do when you pick one. API Gateway integrates with almost all the AWS services. Use EC2 Lambda IP addresses on the back end. API Gateway, you don't have any health checks. You can program your own health checks. In ALB, you click a couple buttons. It's going to take your ALB is going to take your target group, which most of the time is EC2s, right? It'll check the health. If one of them takes too long, it'll take that EC2 out of the target group. Then it'll spin up another one for you. The cool thing about API, you pay for per use. So when your call comes through, when it ALB, you pay for idle. When it's running, because you got to set up, right? You got to pay for it. Let me uncover that so y'all can see that. It's the last bottom two, right? So it's you pay per use and you pay for idle, right? Now, granted, most of the time it's pennies on that, but you still got to pay for it. So if you're a big company, those pennies add up. So that's one reason to use Gateway instead of ALB, right? Because you just pay per use. So if you're running for 10 hours and you don't get any hits on your gateway, you don't pay for it. ALB, if it's sitting there, you paying, right? So let's talk a little bit about architecture. This is kind of really for my own knowledge, own edification, and shout out to drop the link in there. So I think originally when I first started on AWS, I think everybody starts with this being your base architecture, right? You have a load balancer, you got your EC2, you got an auto scaling group, right? Then you got your RDS being usually MySQL, that's super hot. I see a lot of people kind of using Postgres, but especially when you start up, especially if you start in your bedroom, MySQL's free. So you see, so when they get to AWS, as I said, you got your ALB, you got your EC2s, most of the time, which is Linux or Windows. You run in C Sharp, you run in Java, you connect into a MySQL database or a SQL Server database, and you're scaling up, scaling down. So you're managing all this infrastructure, being the EC2, right? You got your load balancer, RDS, right? AWS is handling the infrastructure, but you're manually creating your tables and your indexes and your foreign keys, right? Your traditional database stuff. Then I think level two, and shout out to Women in Linux, so is like we just got talking about API gateway, right? Which is kind of serverless compared to LB. Then you got your Lambda EC2. You spin up Linux and Windows. Lambda, you just putting your code out there, and AWS is handling that infrastructure for you. So it could be Java, C Sharp, PHP, Node.js, all right, Bado. So there's a few things in there. And two, instead of having a traditional RTDS, they're doing NoSQL, which is a DynamoDB. So I see that's how, right? It's more flexible. I don't have a hard-coded data dictionary or schema, so I have less work. I can just add data elements on there, right? I don't have to re-import it. I don't have to match them up, right? For me, that's a violation. But I can see if you try to be super agile and you learn. So then you go your DynamoDB, right? So I'm calling that AWS level 2, right? So you're getting used to setting this up. You're getting your Lambda. You got your DynamoDB, right? You got your VPC. So in there, you got your subnets. You got different availability zone. You're in one region, right? So I think I'm calling that AWS level 2. So this is kind of what I'm trying to get the hang of now. This I'm pretty comfortable with. I got my load balance. I got my EC2. I'm auto scaling. I'm simple auto scaling. I'm step scheduling, right? Then I'm doing a schedule out, and I'm doing a schedule auto scaling group, meaning your people coming at 8 a.m. in the morning, right? I can just spin up 50 EC2 servers because I know we're gonna have 1,000 people in the office right at 8 a.m. I don't want them to start hooking in, right? I got to start spinning them up individually. I could do a schedule auto scaling group. So at 8 a.m. people come in, boom, I got the infrastructure set up, right? Or I could do anything over 80%, spin up another EC2, right? So now you starting combining auto scaling metrics of how you want to do it and when you want to do it, right? So trying to master that too, like he said, is if I know we're doing a big sale or something, I can warm up my load balancer to get ready for 10 million hits or a million hits, right? If I let them automatically connect, then behind the scenes, AWS is trying to scale up more load balancer stuff in the back. I can warm those up saying I know what it's going to be, right? So get it ready, right? So trying to understand that from an architectural standpoint, right? And once again, two is, okay, API gateway can handle it. Got my Lambda. I don't have to worry about that. DynamoDB, NoSQL, boom, right? I think I'm calling that the level 2, trying to get to understand that. Because when you work for somebody, people are going to have different architecture. And even in the same company, one division could be this, right? Because they're not as mature as the other division, right? So you can have different levels, even the same company. I worked at the state agency as a consultant. They had 30,000 employees, right? And they had 96 agencies, right? So each agency is at a different level of maturity of how they want to set up their architecture. So theoretically, as a solution architect, you need to be able to understand multiple architectures so you can help different teams at different levels, right? To be able to get used to what they need to do, right? So what's up, W? Let me see. Is Lambda what you use to serve up your application? Yeah, Lambda basically is Lambda right there. It's basically code. So you would put your code up there, which is your application. So I could put Java in there. I could put with Java, because when I put Java in my Lambda behind the scenes, you don't know, but they're actually spinning up Tomcats behind the scenes for you. If you put C Sharp behind the scenes, they're spinning up IIS. But yeah, Lambda is where you put your code. And I think they have 6 different languages. So when you pick your language, they know what servers are going to spin up for that language, right? And they're going to manage that behind the scenes for you. We're going to talk about that too. It's called Elastic Beanstalk. So you put that in Lambda, it'll spin up. Then if you want to handle them on EC2s, you can do that with Elastic Beanstalk. So there's a couple of different ways to handle. But yeah, Lambda is what you do to serve up your application. Oh yeah. Facts. But that's the reason they actually start coming up with AWS, because they were doing it for themselves. And after Black Friday, those big events jam, they had all that extra hardware just sitting around like, okay, we handled, like you said, 100 million people over the last week. Now we got 10 million people. What are we going to do with all this extra hardware? So who would jump on the stream with PBR? It's all cool. It's all cool. Okay, thanks, W. I was gonna ask you, did I answer your question? No, it's all cool. Shout out to Calvin. So this is I think I'm calling the top level, but shout out to Women in Linux. So we're gonna do some collabing and is she's real big on Kubernetes. EKS is elastic Kubernetes, right? So Kubernetes, you got your pods at the bottom, your different containers, right? So you could use EC2s, you could use Lambda, then you use containers, right? How do you do the containers, right? So you see EKS is that's AWS version of Kubernetes, right? Pods are at the bottom of your private subnet, right? So that's the third architecture. Big companies, they love to do containers, right? Because if you got Lambda, right, if it runs longer than 15 minutes, you can't use Lambda, right? So what will be your play? Your play probably will be stepping up to containers because then you have more control of your back end, right? Because on Lambda, I can say how much memory and what's my concurrency, meaning how many lambdas do I want to spin up. The rest of that AWS handles on the back end. You don't have fine grained control over that. When you go to Kubernetes and Docker, right, you get that fine grained control, but you get a lot more things to handle, right? So hopefully in 2023, I'm be focusing on Docker and Kubernetes. Shout out to Women in Linux. So I get Tam on here to help me out with the with the Kubernetes. I got to get better with the Kubernetes. Got to get better with. Oh my God. What's up, Chaos Rain?
Can you make sure everything is set? I get you. I can. Oh, then I probably didn't again this because I'm having computer issues lately, man. I'm not sure what's going on, man. I don't like this Windows thing, man. We had more than one computer and it did something, and I'm not sure if I have to restart my computer to regular stuff. I don't know.
That's probably what it is.
I mean, well, I might have to now, and this is the most I work on this one. There's a game laptop stuff, so it kind of sucks if it have to come to that. But anyway, I respond back to email. But moving forward, okay, you talking about Amazon Web Servers. Is it like any form of like cybersecurity that like they're monitoring the servers so no one doesn't really go in there and try to hack and do things?
Yeah. They got the best. Yeah, they got the best security. I actually talked to some of the guys, man. They got 2,000 cybersecurity people on staff daily around the world. I actually just interviewed with them for an engineering job. Now they got the best on the planet. First, I do a lot of federal work. At first, I would tell people, let's run it on a prem because we could control it. But they got so many good people. It's actually safer to run it up in their cloud because they got the cameras. They got the best threat analysis, threat monitoring. They got I'm trying to think of the name of them. They spend like $10 million on software to monitor that stuff around the world, man. Because they make billions of dollars. Most the average company, even big company, can't afford the stuff they spend. This, so man, they got it down to a science. Man.
Well, I'm not saying most companies don't got the money. They're not willing to invest the money. Let's be clear. I'm not the ops. I remember one time certain supermarkets, I think here in the Upper East Coast, if I can remember, they said they got hit by another country. I don't know if it was Russia or something, but they got like a cyber hit. And now they have to sit there and have to move backwards to address it. And personally, if you don't know, a lot of people, especially in these old, like, supermarkets or any other convenience stores that's been around for over a century, they have not updated none of their equipment. They still run on some old Windows 7, and we're in 2022, where like most like even with Amazon, because they have their own storefront and they have like a actual facility in their home base in Washington, right? They have up to date stuff because they do majority of their business online. While most places that's not where people still come in buy things physically and stuff, they have not made the conscious effort yet to do so. And when they get hit like that, you're losing close to $250 million. If it takes, depending on how long the company been around, how much they made, stuff, it's still controlled here in America or outside America. That you're making thing on them in the close to billions now, or roughly around that. And you tell me you can invest a few million here and there to protect the computers, most employees that just at work, you're still running off old shit. You're asking
No, that's a good
for
point.
somebody to steal your stuff. You know?
No, that's true. But two is I think a lot of people still think it won't be us too. So, but no, that's true.
I
Because
mean, yeah, yeah. I know. Go ahead. Listen. So.
no, you're right. Cause two is those grocery store, man. Everybody taking them credit card payments, so they batching all that stuff at night. So they moving a lot of money with credit card stuff. So you would think they would do a little better.
Yes.
So no,
They're
that's
moving
true.
a lot of things with, and let's say we go completely digital with this, and we no longer use a physical cash, which eventually will happen down the line. Not soon, but maybe next decade or half. Right? They're saying
Mm-hmm.
you're not even prepared up to par yet with this, and you got hit. I guarantee other places like you say Amazon, they can't afford to get hit. If they get hit, the hit will be very minimal. You get me? Very quick,
No, it's
because they make more. And we think saying if you're a growing company and you are expanding or whatever, right? It will make sense. And I'm not sure Walmart has the same issue, but if one supermarket that's been around for a century and Walmart has not been around for nearly more or 50 years, that's saying I know for a fact you might be making a lot of money, you might be the best retailer, but I guarantee your tech shop is not up to par. While other industries are already ahead of the game. So anytime that they want to buy you out or you take a serious financial hit, they could do so with ease now because you're not up with the times.
No, that's a good point. Like you said, and
And
Walmart came up. They finally getting up to time because Amazon was killing them. So they spent a lot of money on their IT over the last year because you can ship out a lot of stuff with Walmart, not at the level of Amazon, but they got a nice online store that you can buy stuff. So like you said, everybody's trying to get up to date, man. So if they get hit, they're ready, and just trying to keep up with Amazon electronically. So,
but my thing is this: that a lot of corporations don't see the investment to do so. The only time they do it is when they have to be forced. Because remember, they're getting tax-free money. You get me? Unless I have to be forced, then I will do so because I have the money. But you should not be in a position where you have to wait till you have to be forced to do so. You should be already up on it from the start. Me as a person, I know most people work for people for a living. I understand it, but people want to understand that if let's say black people decide to say they're going to do their own, if we want to have this conversation, that we have to understand what people are doing lacking really wrong. That if we're going to venture out, that these things we're going to do, we could have the capability to do better and even much superior because we see the flaws already. You know?
No, that's true.
And we have the better advantage because we see it right there, up front there. And we decide to, if we want to branch off and do our own thing. I tell people you gotta learn from people's other corporation mistakes and be able to fix their problems.
True. It's funny you mentioned that. We had this thing that we used to do every month. Anybody got hit, we would bring that to a room and we would go through, okay, if Twitter got hit or Amazon got hit or wow, okay, they got hit this way. If we got hit, could we survive it and could we get back, or what do we have in place to make sure that's not us, right? So it's called a tabletop. So we would take it out like on the tabletop and walk through the paper. Okay, that was a ransomware hit. They did it like this. Do we got zero trust? Do we got this type of software that would know that pattern? But so now, like you said, we always try to learn from people's mistakes. So that's one thing I'm gonna start doing on my channel is when people get hit, kind of bring it up on the tabletop and just walk through that. Like if I work for your company, this is how we will walk through and look over your architecture to see, if that happened to us, will we get hit, and if we did get hit, how bad will we get towed up? Go ahead.
Yeah.
So like, gotta learn from people's mistakes. It's funny. I read your other part of email when you brought up them books. I think I read half because I'm thinking about starting a book club or some of that. So it's funny you mentioned that. So that's on my thing, maybe to start a book club. I don't know when I got time to read a book though. So
yeah, I feel you. Let me take this call. We like I said, I send my information. How many episodes possible? All right, that's it.
All right, I will. Stay on me, man. I'll be late on my email sometime. I'm gonna get back with you though, man. I'm gonna do better. I
Oh, that's
promise.
fine. That's cool. Thank
Thanks for coming up. We'll link up.
you. All right.
All right, I'll talk to you later. Come on, coach. But yeah, Calvin put this up. He's right. That's a long debate. I've just really switched over the last few years on-prem versus other people's stuff to debate, right? The debate of the ages. Now, for me, I just don't see anybody better than the three big cloud vendor. I think there's only probably 5% of the companies are better than them, even on their own prem. Like there's always a risk when you running on other people's stuff, but the stuff I see people running on, they're not even close to that level. And I know a couple big companies that went to Amazon. The savings were so much, probably 40%. They end up spending the exact same amount of money, but they got so many more resources, and especially on a security level, the delta they got from the savings, they got their security posture up to a much higher level. So, but he's right. That's always a debate. Like I said, I really just changed probably over the last 5 years. I was a staunch on-prem person, but I started seeing the people we had versus the people they have, and I'm like, they people are much better than our people. So let's see. But if you make someone do it the right, that's considered overreach by government. People would fight a loud company, but profits over safety and security. Yeah, we have that argument all the time too. The side part, I have to defend the companies because Calvin brought up a good place. Sometimes you can say as a company, we're going to assume that risk, and this is the reason why. Sometimes it's money. Because I've seen stuff where it's like, dude, we're not paying $250,000 for another Cisco router. Because a lot of time the government says you should have one for production and a different one from development. Most companies like, oh no, man, we ain't spend another $250,000. We're gonna use both of them, and we just gonna virtualize both of them. But if that one router get hit, you toast, right? Because that's your own physical router. Where a lot of times they want you to have two, one for backup, one for production, that you can lock down a little tighter, right? But like he says, though, is overreach by government. The cool thing is, depending on what industry is, the government can find you. That kind of forces people. I do a lot of IRS work, so the IRS could find you, your agency or your state. So that's how they kind of force you. Hey, he's up on that count. He's up. Compare the cloud to who is the big three. I consider cloud the big three. Of course, Amazon, Azure, and Google. And I think everybody falls underneath. I'm going by Gartner. Gartner had a big three, and everybody falls underneath. Compared, so that's who I put the cloud as the big three. And I don't see. I mean, especially if you're not talking about a tech company, I'm trying to figure out who would you put from a security part that could handle the big three. Shout out to Ice Cube in the Big Three basketball league. So that's why I'm considering a big three, Calvin. By aka Gartner. That's who they got in the big three, and everybody else falls under Team Azure. Oh yeah, you know they right there. Shout out to Team Azure. I'm a AWS bigger, but shout out to Azure, man. Shout out to Will. I'm trying to get that multi-cloud on. So I'm focused on AWS, but once I get super comfortable, I'm gonna go right behind Azure. I probably do 30% of my security reviews on Azure. So when vendors come to us, they say we're running in AWS or Azure, then I have to review the security of their setup. Like we were just looking at some of the high level setups at the bottom. So that's a good one. So I'll review this. They got their VPC. What's their subnet? Are their subnets private? Are they using keys? Are they using FIPS 140- encryption? At the end, is their database encrypted at the bottom? Like you said, coming up to your API, are you locking down that subnet? So only that subnet could get to your API that could get to that specific database from the outside. Outside meaning be coming from the internet or different, right? Am I making this company come through on a VPN tunnel, right? So there's a lot of ways, different security resources to check when you're reviewing security for another. Like I said, I do government work, so I got to review security for NIST 853, DOD, CMC. So shout out, yeah, Team Azure. I got to get better. Shout out to that. The Oracle, I got them right behind that, man. I got them in the second quadrant, Calvin. I got Salesforce, Oracle, IBM, because they do a lot of artificial intelligence. So I got them kind of on the second tier. And I think that's where Gardner got them at, actually, too. I made my first bag of Oracle, so I'm not hating, man. My last lab I did this morning, I was connecting a API gateway to Lambda and Lambda to an Oracle RDS. So shout out to Oracle. I was doing a little Oracle this morning. I created a couple tables and select them out of my Lambda. So I was going to give it back to my additional JSP, which would be in Angular if I do a Java website. So shout out to me. I was lab every day. Shout out to Dewan. No Leno or any other cloud providers getting tech YouTube to hawk their wares. I'm with you. Is it common for organizations to use both AWS? Yep, actually, let me roll that back. Big companies, it's common to do both, JM. Because what happens is their development team might love AWS because they came out first, so they're doing a ton of Java stuff. They want to do AWS. But what Azure did was brilliant. Well, they was like, Active Directory, you want to run that in AFDS in the cloud and let us manage all that. You want an Office 365, run it on the cloud because we're going to charge you cheaper money, right? So for JM4, so for all those, I call them company infrastructure products, Office 365, email, Active Directory, right? Azure make that easy, right? So now I got my programming staff in AWS, but I got my company stuff running in Azure, right? So how do I meld them from a security perspective? So I see a lot of the big clients I look at, they're actually in both. Once again, they're in Office 365, they're in Active Directory, which is AFDS in the cloud. They're managing all of that, right? Then their programming staff got in early and they're in AWS, right? So they're running EC2s, they're running Lambda, right? So your big companies are in AWS as a hybrid. Oh, yeah. Facts. You're right, Black Dove. I'm glad you put that. And what happens is nobody's gonna put everything at once in the cloud. So they tiptoed in the Office 365 and the email. They got AWS, but then they left their workloads on prem, right? So like Black Dove said, so now I got some on prem, I got some in Azure, and I got some in AWS, right? So now the question is, how do you do single sign-on or federated between all three of those to make it easier for your employees to work and for your vendors to work, right? So now I'm in three places. I got some on prem. I got some, like I said, I got the Office 365 and I got the Active Directory in cloud, and I got some of my programming in AWS. But if I'm a Windows shop, all their stuff in Azure because I got TFS in the cloud. We got, once again, we're using our AFDS to connect to my C# on my workbench and stuff. That's in Azure because that's easy. That's almost like a lift and shift. You don't have to change a lot. You can just lift it and put it in Azure. But two is nobody's going to do it all at once. They're tiptoeing in because the client I was in, they just start tiptoeing in. We did something small. We got comfortable, something a little bigger, right? So we're taking our on-prem stuff and slowly moving it up there because we want to test it and make sure it's good, right? So the two is just a little different too when you get in the cloud. But so shout out to Black Dove. You definitely gonna have stuff on-prem because you're not gonna move it all at one time. And two is, I think your bigger and mature companies are there. Then you get your startups are there. You got a whole middle, I think, is slowly getting there. I work with some of the big tax guys, and they're just now getting in the cloud. So I think, too, and we talked about, that's the future. That's really the next bag. You got to get in the cloud, understand those resources. I think it's going to be a multi-cloud. Shout out to Calvin. There's so many players. Oracle, love Oracle. Like I said, I think they're in the second tier. Salesforce is super hot. Shout out, Keep It Tech. He interviewed one guy. He didn't have the certs. He actually had the badges in the labs for doing all the Salesforce lab. He said he got $100,000 just showing the badges for doing the labs at Salesforce because it's so hot, right? Yeah, they still got them until they get them all up in there. The crazy thing is the clients I see now, they got the big room, but it's only half filled, right? Because they're slowly getting those big jobs into the cloud. And the other thing too is over the years, hardware's got so much better as you don't need as many racks as you used to. Right. And two is I was in some cloud, they had like 100 standalone apps. So each one of them, even though it was one you in there, you had so many of them. But now they're taking those standalones and they're consolidating them. And each one of those racks, I mean, you can get, one you could have 8 cores, 32 cores, right? So you don't need as much hardware because it's so much better than it was before. So I think those two alone, you didn't shrink the room, you just have less hardware in it. So that's what I usually see when I go in big rooms. But yeah, they're still around there. Oh yeah, facts, Adams. I'm right there with you. Long story short, I'll be 55 this year. I made money in Oracle. I've done web app, application server, database, DBA stuff. My next 10 years before I retire, I'm going to cloud. I actually just got 4 AWS certs, and I'm supposed to sit for one. I think next month I'm gonna sit for one on my birthday. So now, Adams family, the cloud is now. I would say I'm a little late, but which cert do you got? Which cert you working on, Adams family? Nah, facts. It's weird though. Yeah, I always go back and forth. Is obviously you don't need as many hardware technicians, especially on site. And two is I'm from the 80s. We actually used to solder CPU boards. Man, CPU board now is so cheap. I'm not gonna pay you $50 an hour to solder a board. I'm just gonna throw it away, right? So I think we to that point where hardware, especially workstations, are cheap because in a minute people just going to use Google Chrome, and once you get to this cloud, that's going to be where all your computer power is. I think we're super close to getting there. Now I need a little heavy machine because I'm YouTube and I'm trying to edit, which I suck at. I'm doing my Adobe, right? But in the near future, you're just going to connect to the cloud and all your computer cloud like we do now. Most of that stuff is going to run in a browser, and you're just going to push it to the cloud. And I think that's going to be a future. You really just not going to need technicians. You're just going to really start throwing away Google Chromebooks. I think they're going to be more like lightweight Google Chromebooks, and they're going to be so cheap that you're not going to try to fix it. You're just going to throw it away. Or I take that back. You're going to lease it, right? Like you lease computer hardware. It's going to be so cheap, like $2 or $3. When it stops working, you're just going to ship it back, and they're going to ship you another one. Right. So then they have refurbish them, ship them back out, right, to somebody else. So I think the two is you won't keep anything on your local drive. It's always going to be in the cloud, right, where it's getting backed up and being 2 different availability zones on different sides of the world, right? So if one center goes down, you have an automatic backup of the other one. So no, you're right, Jam. I think that's where we're going to be. Which are you working on the cloud practitioner, Adams family? And 2 is like you said, I just think we need to pick your cloud and go with it, man. I think people named a few of them. I think the big 3 are really pretty even. You got to figure out which one works for your specialty and what's your value add that you're adding on to the cloud, right, to make you more valuable. And let's get it. So lightweight for end users is the cheapest, but they were overcharged to the government for the computer. Yeah, probably. Because 2 is when you when you send stuff to the government, though. 2 is they put extra regulations on it, right? So a lot of times they're, I won't say you should overcharge them, but they add extra regulations unnecessarily for you to charge them. Currently, I have the solution architect associate. Okay. And the sysop admin. Yeah, the sysop. Yeah, that's the one I think I'm going to take. Because did you take it when they had the 3 labs? Because now you got to do the 65 questions and the 3 labs. That's the only AWS one I think that has labs with the sysop. I got the cloud practitioner. I got the solution architect. I got the associate developer, and I got the security specialty. So I'm hoping to take the CISOP next month and take the Associate Architect Professional. That's what really when I'm getting ready for January, maybe for that professional. I looked at that's got me a little nervous that out of from that professional. It'd be like a 4-part question in the professional. They said it's like 70% harder than the associate. So I took a few practice tests for the professional one. So that's what I think. So I'm gonna take the CISOP probably in a couple weeks, 3 weeks, then hopefully sit for the professional. Really, my end goal is to take the DevOps. I want to get back into DevOps. I've been doing compliance and kind of DevSecOps more as an analyst though, not as an engineer. I want to do DevOps as an engineer. I keep saying that, like, do I want to get called at night? So now that's what I'm shooting for. DevOps is really where I'm going to end up. Oh no, facts, and see facts. But that's it though. You don't need as many and I don't think they get paid as much NC worker. So so I agree with you. I just don't think same online so CP they would spend on special. Nah, facts. So I took it before it changed, but the professional. Oh yeah, I took it. That's it, man. To get the professional one. So yeah, I've been studying. I labbed this morning. What did I do this morning? I created what did I do? I did a maintenance window and a patch manager. So I did a maintenance window, then I patched Linux and Windows in a 2-hour window, and I upgraded it from like they had like 4 critical patches. So I set up the patch manager to patch those at a certain time once we approved it. So set my patch windows from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. Then from 2 to 4, I did Linux. Then from 4 to 6, I did Windows. So I separated them out. So I did a maintenance window. Then inside your maintenance window, you can tell it what to patch. Then inside that patch, I think it's 4 levels. You can do critical, regular, security, and I thought it was non-essential. So I tell it which one I want to do in that patch window, in that maintenance window, what they need to fix. So I've been labbing pretty hard. No, you're right. We get called when the app doesn't work or somebody puts something in that broke something, Calvin. You are correct. But if you do a release and one of the programmers didn't test something and all suddenly it shuts down, we get called a lot of times. I don't get called as much of it, but when I was on integration team, which is the new DevOps, if it breaks, they're calling DevOps first, right? It's usually a programmer didn't test something or something got pushed in or something get built right in the cloud formation so it doesn't have enough memory. No, you're right. What happens is when something breaks because we put a new release out or that one time somebody put a BIOS upgrade and it broke the app. So now you're correct, but every now and then you still get called. Very rarely, especially security. The only time I get called now is when somebody thinks we've been hacked. I've been called in the morning with that. It looked funny. Do you get your lab instruction or ideas from somewhere, or do you freestyle as doing a lab? A little of both. I'm actually, I think I told them it's called a digital cloud. That's what I'm rolling with. They have labs in there, and here I'll show you one of the labs. Let's see. I'll find one of the labs and I'll show it real quick. So yeah, I do a little buffing. A lot of times when you go inside AWS, like API Gateway, when you go into documentation, they usually have labs in there for you to do inside the user guide, JM, which is pretty cool. So I usually walk through those. Like I said, I've been doing this thing called Digital Cloud. This Australian guy, I seem to like him. So so I've been using his labs. I'll show you one real quick. No, it's the content. So I do a little of both on a freestyle. So I usually do on the digital cloud. They model it after the test, right? These aren't the tests, but I think they kind of figure out what kind of things they be asking the test. So I think they put those in your labs to kind of make sure it will help you pass. So that's the reason I've been kind of going after his. There it is, system manager. Configure system manager. It's patch manager. So yeah, and I can see it. So it says create a new patch baseline. So it kind of walks you through Amazon 2, do a system manager, patch manager, predefined baseline. So it kind of shows you. Then there's the default Amazon Linux 2 patch. So it kind of walks you through what that looks like. Gives you the name of what you should name it. See there, the severity. Just pick the critical and important patches. Auto approved after 5 days. So you kind of go through these scenarios, and when you take your test sometime, that's how the scenario looks when you do it, right? So those are the ones I come up with, Jam. So that's kind of you push out changes at 12 p.m. Now instead of 12 a.m. you roll back or break via revert prior by rolling back and stuff. But yeah, you're right, Cal. The only problem with that a lot of times is even when depending on the release, a lot of even my bigger clients, they're not mature enough to push out in the day because the business doesn't want you to lose any downtime. So they want you to do it at night on the weekend. They don't want you to because if we do it at 12 p.m., we're not mature. So we got to take the system down. So if we take the system down, we got 50 people in customer service twiddling their thumbs, Calvin. So they don't want us to do now. I've been pushing like you. We need to get mature enough to do that. But a lot of the clients I work for, even though they're big, they're not that mature. So when they take it down, they got to take it down for 4 hours to get the release out, get the database, change it out, get the foreign keys, recreate stuff. You might have to do a slight data migration to get some new code transformed in a certain way to match the new database dictionary. And we're just not that mature, right? I see people do that, like the big companies do that, Calvin. The clients I work for, ooh, we're not that mature. And if we mess up, they don't want to have 100 people twiddling their thumbs because we done took the whole damn company network down. So no, Calvin, we're not there yet. I agree with you, but there's a lot of people not that mature yet. Now we getting there. It looks similar. Yeah, it's very similar to TryHackMe, Jam. I've done a little TryHackMe. Yeah, so they just kind of walk you through, which is cool. Until I just did a practice test. I actually paid for Amazon's got their practice sale. They had a sale, and I think I paid $20. So they actually give you a practice test real similar to what you're going to take in a real test. So I took it. I passed. I think I got a 79 on the 65 questions, and I think I got an 84 on the test. They were setting up a AWS config, and if the S3 bucket wasn't automatically encrypted, you have to set up the AWS config to auto remediate that as a bug, right? So I set it up and did their practice test. It was pretty cool, but so I think I'm ready for the real test, but we'll see. So we'll see. But now, Calvin, that's my only pushback on that. A lot of people aren't mature to do that, man. So, and like I said, I don't disagree with you, but the class I work for, they still old school on though. Even though in the cloud, they still old school in it. It's like, so they're getting there, but no. So I want to wish everybody a Thanksgiving weekend. Y'all see me. I'm going. Of course, I'm gonna try to go live. I'm comparing. I'm doing an old school Bill Gates because I'm comparing. He was Mark Zuckerberg for before Mark Zuckerberg, so that's coming up because people worried that Facebook was taking over the world. That's what they said about Windows 95. The government tried to overregulate him like they doing Mark. They tried that with Bill Gates. So Bill Gates bought a lot of companies. Mark's bought a lot of companies. Their stock price went up. Now Mark Zuckerberg stuff, the metaverse is he burning the money up, right? So it's cyclical. So I'm gonna compare Bill Gates to he was Zuck before Zuck. He was too powerful. Congress was worried about him. He was taking over the United States. Then the cloud came and almost took him out, man. If it wasn't for Nardelli to get Azure right, they would have went under. And and Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer was giving Nardelli hell when he was spilling up Azure because they got pissed because he really started with Linux on Azure before he started with Windows, and they were mad. So a lot of times I just tell people, wait, what's hot now won't be hot later, and no company's ever handled the transition to the next thing. IBM had the mainframe. When it went to Windows, Bill Gates had it. When it went from Windows to cloud, Amazon had it. So whatever the next thing is, right? You got winners because what happens when you get big, you get sloppy, you get lazy. So let's see. Is it difficult to explain those technical things as to why you have to stop uptime when the boss is non-technical? Is it difficult to explain those technical things as why you have to stop when your boss is non-technical? No, I've been doing it so long. The key words you got to use is the key words you do with bosses because they really don't care about technology, Jam. It took me a while to figure that out. What I'm telling them is risk, fines, how much time it's going to take, and what features, right? So if I say, okay, we're at 4 hours, if the risk is if we try to go forward, we only got 2 hours to do it. We're going to be in company time. So are you going to have 100 people twiddling their thumbs while you figure that out? The risk of that, of having, they have FTEs. So if we have 200 people twiddling their thumb, right, that's going to be $10,000 an hour, right? So that's what I talk when I talk to them, Jam. I don't even really talk technical, right? The technical thing is this division is running Linux, and this is the problem we're having with Linux, right? So the risk of X is going to cost us X, right? So either we can roll back, which is going to take X amount of time. Or if we keep going forward, right, and we got 20 people, how much money is that? So I usually talk in risk, time, money, and FTEs, full-time equivalents, right? So that's kind of how I try to talk to them from a technical standpoint. And each level is different. Like the CIO, he really cares about risk. Now, when I talk to the CISO, he wants to know time and security. Right. When I talk to the operations manager and the development team, now we're talking strictly money. But when you're talking about the people at the top, they really just risk time, how long it's going to take, what's the probability of us making this work. Right. Then after that is what's the root cause of what happened? Why did we didn't make it? Right. And we need to make sure that don't happen again. Bill's interesting figure, but that was Ballmer who almost took it out of case. I left. No, you're right. I lump them together. Gates put him in charge. Shout out to Harvard. But yeah, but so now it's so and actually funny. I got Ballmer in there. I got about 4 slides on Ballmer because Ballmer's the one that missed the cloud. Ballmer was like, F the cloud. We're Microsoft. We don't have to worry about it. So that's funny you mentioned. I got 4 slides of Ballmer in my thing. So. No, you're right. No, you're right. He left by then. Bill was just a figurehead. He was just getting money as the chairman of the board. No, you're right with that. No, it's funny. No, like I said, I got to think 3 or 4 slides on Ballmer. Let me know if that makes sense, JM. But I want everybody to have a nice Thanksgiving week. Hopefully you get 2 days off. I got to look on my calendar. I don't know if I think I got Friday off. So some people working Friday, some people are not. So I got a ton of vacation time, so take a little vacation time. So, I hated when he did that jump thing, man. When he was sweating around, I think I got a video showing that too. He was 10 toes deep in it. I got the video where he was clapping and sweating at one of their big sales convention. Man, he was physically sweat through his clothes. Man, he was a Harvard straight old school. He was Elon Musk because he would make you come in now if he was working today. He wouldn't let you work remote. Ballmer was one of those guys. So the more things it is, the more things stay the same, though. But nah, shout out to Ballmer though, man. Who did he buy? Ballmer. Who does Ballmer own? He owned one of those basketball teams. Oh, he bought the Los Angeles Clippers, man. Shout out. When you make enough money, you can buy a basketball team. You a billionaire paying millionaires. Shout out to Steve Ballmer. That's when you know you got that real tech money, man. Billionaires playing millionaires. Shout out to Steve Ballmer. That tech money. Be good money, though. So shout out to him. So let's see. My bad. Shout out to the Bird app. I'm gonna do a video on him. I'm gonna do the security of it. People been talking about the security, so I'm gonna do the security of it. There's been a lot of architecture diagrams, so I'm gonna talk about the security of it. So shout out to Adrian Ash. Let's see. Farmer dropped $5 billion on the Clippers who haven't won strike. That means you got it like that. It ain't tricking if you got it, Cal. Shout out to Steve Ballmer. Right, $5 billion. $5 billion. Didn't break a sweat. That was pocket change. Shout out to Bomber. I forgot how much he's worth. I got his worth on one of my slides when I talk about Bill Gates. I think I'm gonna do that Tuesday, late night with PBR. I think that's gonna be 10 p.m. this Thursday. So I'm gonna get on those slides today and tomorrow. Get those filled up. Then I'm gonna do the Bird. I think I'm gonna do security of the Bird app. And when you escort people out, how does that security work? Because I've done that before. It's a good time to start putting passport stuff. Facts, man. Shout out to the passport bros. Yeah, I think that was part of the plan, though. I think he's got his own team. I think, he's rolling with the PayPal mafia, man. I think he's got engineers on deck that was already set up to jump in. He didn't spend all his own money, so I think he's working with some of the big VCs behind the scenes. So I think they had engineers ready to go, to stabilize that. That's just my 2 cents. Bomber's worth $67 billion, I think. Yeah, 5. He got 62 left. Just gotta pay 7 for it, man, so we can round down to 60. Now, shout out, it's something crazy like that. Because Bill's worth 240? I don't even want to look Bill up there too. Yeah, that's that real tech money, man. I'm just trying to get a little of that pocket change, man. Shout out to Black Hike. Shout out to Women in Lynch, man. I'm just trying to get a little of that 250,000 type money, man. That's what I'm trying to get to, man. They talking about Billy, man. I'm trying to get some of them restricted stock options, RSUs, man. I'm trying to get some of them restricted stock units, man. That's what I'm trying to get to. I'm old. I ain't got much time left, man. I'm trying to get me a couple RCUs, give them to my grandbabies and call it a life. But once again, everybody have a great Thanksgiving. I want everybody to eat up, man. I'm gonna be eating. I'm going on a diet January 2023, me and the rest of America. So shout out to me and America. Get ready to go on a diet in January. We're gonna get focused. Let me see what my man got to say. The Bird app. It's about speculation. Turn around. He was giving benefits of doubt. No, I agree with that. I think he got the benefit of the doubt, man. Tesla's making money, SpaceX is making money. Now, some of that we can talk about is the quality of the car where it should be, right? But he got Tesla, man. He got SpaceX. They making money. So I think, like you said, I think he's living on that reputation, right? That's different than a consumer app like Twitter, right? But he's turned those companies around. And two is can you get the right people? Can you get focused? Right, and they got money, so they can get talent. He's got money, so you can get talent. And there's a lot of talent on the street, right? You just got to get the right talent. Happy Thanksgiving. Be easy, stay safe, keep it free and awesome. Most definitely, once again, come check me out. You'll see me on the streets. I think I'm gonna do a late night PBO at 10 p.m. You will see it. You'll see it. I'm gonna put it in there so the algorithm will push it out. But come check me out. Late night PBO. We're going old school. We're gonna talk about Bill Gates. Windows 95 when he had Bono and them singing. I think Bono and them got stock options, man. Steve was trying to get stock options in Microsoft back then. Shout out to all the rappers, man. Y'all need to get stock options when y'all be doing them commercials, man. Don't take money, take stock options, man. With the restricted stock options. So I want you rappers to go broke, man. I need y'all to get them stock options. But no, shout out. We're gonna go to Bill Gates, and once again, I'm gonna relate him to Mark Zuckerberg. So like I said, Bill was doing that way before Mark was even born, man. He was taking over the planet too. So technology and time stops for nobody. Nobody ever makes that leap to the next generation of technology very well, right? Because you get old and sloppy. So let's see what my man Calvin said. Making money is speculation at best. Look at the numbers beyond. Oh, facts, man. It's all hype. I mean, that's why I tell people, you very rarely get stock at really the equilibrium price. Either they're overhyped or it goes the other way, right? It's down on it, right? I probably start buying Amazon because people marking it down because of the recession. They laying off people. I think their stock price got cut in half too. Meta's almost in half, and I think Amazon's almost in half. If Amazon keeps falling, man, I'm about to buy me a couple thousand and try to get in on that. Oh yeah, I've been arguing with the kids, man. They mad at me, man. I was calling it the tulip. The tulip. They had to go look the tulip up, and I think that was 1930s speculations on the tulip, man. I was calling crypto tulips, man. They didn't know what it is. They had to look it up. Shout out to the tulip craze. I think it was in the 40s or 30s. So tulips were running up like Bitcoin, and then it ran back down. But cool thing though with Bitcoin, it's on top of blockchain. I believe in blockchain, the technology, smart contracts, right? But what sits on top, right? That's a separate discussion. But once again, have a happy Thanksgiving. Monday's here. Regulations on it makes it not viable, sadly. No, that's true. That's true. Tulips for real, right? So that's it. Once again, I'm out of here. We got an iron 35 in the box. There's so many good content creators. Go check them out. Keep It Techie, Kev Tech, Black Heights, Women in Linux, Savage Scientists. There's so many people I rock with out here. So I'm about to get a list and show you on my community tab. Got so many people I rock with. Once again, everybody have a great weekend. I gotta go run a couple errands, and Monday's here, which sucks. Cool thing is I get work from home, so I guess I can't play them much. Once again, ProfessorBlackOps@gmail.com. Shout out to Cal. I'm gonna do a better job with my emails. Me and my man Chaos Rain's supposed to do something jointly, so we've been kind of missing each other. But I was on Miss B for Ness Friday, so go check that out. It was a great stream. It's in my community tab, so go check it out. We talk everything from the Bird app to we talk a little bit about everything, education, the big tech layoffs. So just a little bit of everything. Go check her out. Great channel. Once again, Professor Black Ops, have a great week.